I say that with such a surprised voice because when I was moving here, I did some research, of course, as you do, and it meant to rain for maybe 5 or 6 days a year in Southern California. This might be day 3 or day 4, and we're on Feb the 6th. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. But yeah, some much needed rain. Obviously, lots of stuff in the news about the fires in Southern California and around the LA area. Thank you for those texting and asking if I've been all right. But yes, it was absolutely miles away from us, 60 miles away. Close enough that you could smell it in the air at times, but nowhere near us in terms of any damage or any safety risk. But I appreciate the thoughts, guys. So what am I going to talk about? I've been planning this in my head for a while. I'm coming up to 5 years living abroad now in the United States. And I think that probably constitutes as a bit of a milestone, not just in terms of being a long time, but I guess symbolically in my mind, it probably signifies a big step. We're either going to be here, me and Kelly, for a very long time or even forevermore. 5 years feels like you've made a bit of a commitment, or that if we do eventually go back to the UK in the future, it's abundantly clear to me now that it's going to be an absolute wrench to leave. That has become very clear. I'm loving my time here. It's fantastic. Of course, there's challenges. Of course, there's things that loom over your head, and hence why I'm doing the podcast, talking about living abroad. But yeah, so coming up to 5 years, really wanted to reflect on my experiences to date. So there's a number of things that I'm going to cover off, and it's probably going to be in more than one podcast, from how the move came about, the things that you have to weigh up and consider when you're thinking about moving to another country, the best parts, as well as some of the difficult parts of living across the pond as well. First, quick life update. After 2 trips to Vegas in the last month, we just got back from our second trip, which was with one of my best mates and his fiance. It was great fun, really, really great fun. I think I might have mentioned that they were going to do this High Rocks fitness event, the 3 of them. 2 of them were very injured and still managed to do it, which is very impressive. Fun to watch, much more exciting than CrossFit. Probably controversial for anyone who's into those things. But yeah, I'm not going to talk about High Rocks. I'm no expert. It was fun to watch. What I will say is Vegas, without the weather and the pools being open, is much more difficult on your feet. My legs, my feet are absolutely throbbing because all you do all day, every day is walk. I mean, you drink as well and you have fun, you gamble, you do all of that. So fantastic time, but I'm exhausted. But yes, I am back in California. Other news, I also bought a Garmin watch. Loving it. Bought it for a couple of reasons. I'd go weeks without wearing my Apple Watch. I was fed up of charging that damn thing bloody every night. The only time you can charge it is when you're sleeping, right? And I really want to track my sleep. It was also really the body battery feature on the Garmin that appealed to me. I'd like to get my sleep insights. Really understand if I'm physically tired or if it's actually mental tiredness, and if it's physical stress, mental stress. All part of me trying to be a healthier version of myself in 2025. And Kelly has made me abundantly aware, safe to say, that has not happened yet. 2 trips to Vegas will do that to you. And yeah, the flu, you name it. But I'm making a commitment to changing my ways. It's a lifestyle change, as my other half would say, rather than diet. We will see. But I'm definitely going to do that. And the watch was all part of that, just to inspire me. That's probably daft. I shouldn't need material things to inspire me, but there you go. Basically, my watch has started to tell me that I'm a walking zombie, which I suspected. So that's good. But my back clearly takes its toll on my body, which I knew anyway, I guess. But just being able to see a few more insights has been quite cool. And the battery life lasts for well over a week, which is a game changer. So I'm actually really enjoying wearing a watch. Whereas historically, I wouldn't wear it for more than a couple of days. So yes, back in California, loads going on as always. I'm actually heading to Chicago on Monday through Thursday night. Hopefully I'll do a podcast there too, a follow-up from this one. Before I jump in though and start talking about my experiences and reflecting on the last 5 years, I've got to speak a little bit about the drones, right? So I'm a little bit peeved. With the new administration, we were promised transparency. Not that I expect it. Not that I expected it from any administration. And so, where did we get to? The new administration did comment on the drones. There's two videos, two key things really. A journalist asked President Trump in the Oval Office last week what the drones were. And Trump instantly grabs his chief of staff. I think it was his chief of staff or just a chief of staff. God, that's hard to say. Or an aide. Not sure who it was. And he basically says, can you look into this immediately? It can't be the enemy. We'd have shot it down. Can you look into this? I want a report ASAP. So then a couple of days later, on the back of that, the press secretary, about to hold a conference at a press briefing, basically says, she starts the conference with, before I start, and I've wrote this down because I want to get the words right on this. Where is it? Okay, I got it. So, before we start, I have an update on the drones from President Trump. They were permitted to fly by the FAA for research and other things. The rest were hobbits. The rest were hobbits. The rest were hobbits, guys. The rest were hobbyists. That's what you get when you read shit. The rest were hobbyists and planes and stuff that was mistaken for stars, etc. Sweeping comment like that then goes into a press conference as if nothing has happened. I'm sorry, something doesn't add up, right? Here is why. The FAA, I think it's the FAA or the FFA, whatever it is, Federal Aviation Authority, we'll go with that. They didn't know what these drones were, or they said they didn't know what these drones were. Under the Biden administration, as recently as December, someone has lied. Why would you give permission to fly over military installations? Even the Langley one that was 12 months before that, across New Jersey. It was also happening in the UK and other places, as we previously talked about. I don't know why you'd leave the public in suspense. Lie under oath in Congress. There were three-letter agencies denying knowing what they were. And it also doesn't reference at all the orbs, which made mainstream news, and there's videos of them online. Now, personally, 90% of these sightings were probably hobbyists. Probably mistaken identity for like commercial airlines and stuff like that. But there was too much smoke with this to be nothing. It was so strange. Even Trump was saying, like, in the build-up to the election that something weird was going on and that the government were just weirdly not telling you. The previous government administration, denied knowledge of this, full stop. And we've obviously seen that as well with the UAP, UFO phenomenon, of course, as well. Like, they have denied that any retrieval programs, any of this stuff exists. Roswell, you name it, we'll come on to that in a moment. But all of these things they're saying don't exist, and yet there's whistleblowers who've worked in the highest levels of government who are coming out quite frequently now as saying the otherwise. Now, the quote, research, was it, and other things, for me is very strange. There are drone companies in New Jersey, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility at all that it was an experimental drone technology of some sort, but overpopulated areas, military bases, without anyone knowing, and then denying the existence of it as well. This must be something highly experimental or highly sensitive and classified. Could have easily been the rogue nuke theory. This has been swept under the rug. They also stated at the end, I probably missed that bit out, that this was not the enemy, and I think that's what they wanted to get across. It's not the enemy, guys, but we ain't telling you what it is. Research and other things. I mean, that is suspicious as hell. So I'll say this. I think it's left me with more questions than answers, and I think it's a really poor response given the transparency. God, I can't speak today. It has been a long day. I've been working since 7:30 this morning. Boo-hoo, cry me a river. I know. Transparency. What was I saying? Oh, my God. And I think it's a poor response given the transparency that we were promised. But having seen that first Trump clip, and I urge you to check it out on the internet, and also basically how much crap is going on with policy right now. I mean, tariffs, immigration. Trump isn't going to single-handedly write a report and brief the public, at least not right away. He has to delegate things. I'm not blaming him or liking him or saying anything. I'm just seeing what I saw on that video. And he may have also just been told that this is classified, top secret. We cannot speak about it at all. You've made a commitment. He's probably saying, I've made a commitment to the public. I'm going to say something. Oh, yeah, guys, the FAA did approve it, but it was for research and other things. So the government knew about it all along. But weird. Then also promised disclosure of classified info such as JFK, RFK, MLK, all of which are now going to be released unredacted, which gave me real hope for Roswell. 1947, I believe it was. I think I've talked about it on a previous podcast, what happened in Roswell, New Mexico. But no, nothing. Again, for me, that just builds suspicion and suspense. I do struggle with the JFK files thing. What could possibly come out now that is groundbreaking, that has been shielded for so long? Because if there was some form of internal involvement, let's going to blame it on President Johnson or whoever else. If there was involvement from a 3-letter agency, you're telling me that all of those files wouldn't have been burned and destroy all the evidence? It's probably been, 50, 55 years or so since he was assassinated. JFK, I'm talking about 64, 67, 68 maybe. Anyway, so that was a bit of a kick in the teeth for me. You know me, I'm ever searching for answers. You can see me, I've got some notes here. I'm like scribbling through. I wanted to make sure I got my drone quote right. I touched on in the last podcast in Vegas about Adam Barber and how the UAP UFO topic has really taken, it feels like, a strange turn into a more psychic / consciousness type territory where I feel much more uncomfortable for one and much more skeptical. And I think the discussion and the eventual discussion around disclosure may head into that direction. It might not just be as simple as the technology. And guys, you know me, I believe in the tech. The tech is what I believe in. The rest is really flipping spooky. And this summoning of UAPs and these whistleblowers that are now saying that there's psionics, there's these people that can summon them from the sky, and that egg shape, there's all these. It's really weird. Was I expecting it? No. I do wonder, I go back to some of the things I've talked about in the past, like whether it's now a psyop where the government's having us on just to try and ridicule the topic again. They've got these people who are undercover, but they seem legit. They seem super credible. And I feel like there's lots more to come with it. And I think there's some more hope in that the Republican Congresswoman, Luna's surname, I always forget her name. I didn't write that down, that was stupid. She has said she's got a very important announcement to make with a big news conference date pending. And she has been hugely supportive of the UAP topic. This is fresh off the press. I've not listened to any commentary around this or any video of her saying this. It was a tweet on X. That's probably not how you say it now. Tweet and Twitter, something and X. Well, I don't know. If someone knows the term, please let me know in the comments. I need a first comment, by the way, guys, on my podcast. No comments as of yet, and no one has done the poll. I didn't do a poll in the last episode, but yeah, I think it was only Kelly who did my poll, so hey, we'll take it. We'll take it. She's my number one fan. So I made the comment that I think in 2025 it will be the year where they announce that the James Webb Telescope will detect signs of life somewhere in space. I talked with Laura on the podcast a couple of episodes ago about that and how there was this classified briefing. If this is something more transparent, or if this is something more around transparency regarding disclosure, it's not quite clear yet. People were speculating online. I did see a few things that this is going to be something to do with UAPs. I'm clearly sounding hopeful. So let's see. I'm not sure. Luna has been involved in some of the congressional hearings that have taken place, where David Grush, where David Fravor, Ryan Graves, Lou Elizondo, some of those people that I listed off in previous podcasts have all been testifying under oath, whistleblowers. She's been involved in getting those into Congress on the record. And she's also been very vocal around the issue, full stop. So it gives me some hope. I'm sure on the next podcast I'll be sat here and it was nothing again, or it's something really weird like eggs and psionic stuff that I'm really not prepared to get my head around. But I feel like there's got to be some more transparency coming, given all of the players that Trump has now brought into his administration, such as Rubio, such as, what's the guy who's now heading up the CIA? No, the name escapes me, but all of them have been very pro UFO disclosure / more transparency. So let's see what comes in the next few weeks. All right, so I'm not going to talk politics on the episode, although I am acutely aware of some of the controversy you're probably seeing in the news about tariffs, which obviously I have an eye on for my own profession. Immigration, even more recently the Gaza Strip, that was a pretty shocking one. The cutting of aid funding, the Elon Musk salute, non-salute, all that kind of stuff. Maybe one day I will dive into this in much more detail. It's such a hot topic. I really want to be well-versed before debating that. And if I'm going to debate it, particularly with anyone on this side of the pond, they're going to know way more about it than me. Yeah, it's a crazy time. I'm sure I can formulate plenty of opinions on it, but I've tried to keep my distance from it, to be honest with you, apart from when it comes to UAPs and the drone sightings and all of that stuff. You know me. I'm obsessed. All right. So. Let me take you back, and myself back. I mean, I am documenting this for myself as well. Like, let's face it, 2019. So I got called I was working in the UK branch of the company that I work for, and I got called into the office by our sales director / VP. And out of the blue, he turns around and he said, "Would you like to go and work in America?" Quickly followed by, "You'd absolutely hate it," and went on to discuss some of the challenges the business were going through there at the time. This is a long time ago, so I feel all right saying it. The business has changed dramatically since then. At this point, we'd been living together in Cannock in Staffordshire for maybe 2 years, me and Kelly, in a house together. I was pushing internally for a promotion to a senior account manager at the time. I was finding the commute very difficult. It was 1.5 hours there, more than that on the way back, just to travel 42 miles. Those of you who know the M6, Junction 9, or Junction 11, it's an absolute bitch. Was finding that really hard with my knees, and I was just exhausted. And not really, to be honest with you, living my life outside of work. I was putting everything into it to climb the ladder and get to where I wanted to get to. Fast forward 5, 6, 7 years later, and here I am. And it's incredible, really. I have to pinch myself. So very proud of that. Anyway, where was I going with that? I was pushing for promotion. My knees were in a much worse position than they were now, as was my back. Commuting wasn't great. And I was really starting to realise that the path towards advancing my career within the UK branch was really limited. And that sounds bad, but the reality of it was because we had such a great team, awesome people. The business was really successful at the time, and so no one was leaving. So I was the young buck. Oh God, I sound American. I was the young buck, so to speak, chomping. That was my American accent, by the way. That wasn't very good, right? I was the young buck trying to get by. Oh my God. I'm going to get shit for that. All right. Chomping at the bit for promotion, and at this point really feeling like more than ready to take on extra responsibility. I was doing it anyway, and I felt really comfortable in my own shoes that I was ready to take that next step and develop. Kelly was working in HR at a university. Was she at university then, or was she at Kuehne+Nagel? One of the two. She had a big commute also. She was doing like an hour on the train to get into Birmingham. If she was at the university, if she was at Kuehne+Nagel, it was like an hour in the car. She was doing really well in her job, but not necessarily enjoying the desk job, corporate office work, and that environment and the politics around that, particularly in HR as well. Like, I mean, it's a bit cutthroat, right? So that kind of sets the scene as to where we were in our lives when we first got asked, would you like to move to America? So we sat down and talked about it. Okay, we don't have children. We could travel to America. Could be an awesome experience. But what about our family? What about our friends? What about our house? What about Kelly's job? So we went back and forth debating it for at least a couple of months. I didn't think too much of it because the conversation really didn't come up again from work for a while. And then it reared its head again, more seriously this time. There's a 2-year secondment on the table. Are you interested in going? So now there's a time frame. If we don't like it after 2 years, we can come back. I think the plan initially was we'll come back. Okay, so will I have a job to come back to? Well, you can't guarantee the same role, which is fair enough. No business can just hold a spot open for you for 2 years. The business we're in, FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods or consumer packaged goods, depending on which side of the pond you're on, it moves quick. It's always changing. You can't hold a position for 2 years. But the company we're on, obviously we keep you within the company. We think the world of you, hence why we're asking you to go over to the US. And the context around that was the US was a fast-growing, developing market, and they wanted some more sales experience to coach some of the team and really to close out business opportunities. So, it sounded fantastic, and it was a nice thing that they'd asked me. And they were looking at more at global mobility as well and trying to give people different experiences and share them across the wider group. By group, I mean the wider company, I guess. So I started asking a few more questions as to how it could work. I found out that there's a thing called employment at will in the States. So you can leave your job at any time, but you can also be fired at any time. I mean, in the UK, there is anywhere from a 3 to 9 month notice period, depending on how senior you are within the organisation. This was a bit of a shock for me in the US. I mean, you could get fired tomorrow. Not that I was going to get fired. And obviously I wouldn't leave either, like you're moving countries. But I was like, okay, where's the protection with that? What if it doesn't work out? So now I'm thinking, gosh, I've got to come up with some form of agreement with the company here, some sort of cover for a couple of months. If I get to the end of my secondment and there's no job waiting back for me in the UK, where's the security in that? And me and Kelly were working hard, like trying to pay a mortgage. Like, do you know what I mean? Like those are the things that come into your mind. Like, you need protection in the same way as you'd have protection in the UK. So that was all fine. That got sorted very quickly. The company were fantastic about it, to be honest. Then came the kicker. Being as me and Kelly weren't married, Kelly wasn't allowed to work. We'd been together probably 7 years at this point. We've been together like 12 years now. Isn't that scary? Scary in a good way. Just to clarify, I'm not saying anything crazy, just feeling old while still being a big kid. Doing a podcast, talking to myself with my alien light. There you go. For those of you who can see, my alien light is on in the background. So all the while this is going on, my boss at the time was also lining up a senior account manager position for me in the UK. Kelly could still work. It would be a pay rise. It would be career progression. It would be what I wanted, which I didn't think was possible given how tight-knit the team was, how great it was, and no one was really moving. So that was coming together as well now. So there was another much safer, less radical option. But there was this feeling in my mind that this was an adventure to be had, unlike anything else that we could potentially do. And we were young enough to dare to go and do it. We hadn't got children. The other thing, I guess, to consider too was that this opportunity was incredibly rare. To get a visa to work in the US, it's not easy. I had to be working at the parent company, or I had to be working at the company in the country that you live for 12 months to even be considered for qualification of the visa and sponsorship, so to speak. There's some other ways as well, but it's definitely not easy and not guaranteed. So this is probably our only route and our only chance to ever go and live in America, realistically, unless life took a crazy turn, which they do, of course, but still. Anyway, I was also really struggling with my left knee at the time. I'd had surgery twice at that point as a teenager and never quite fixed the problem. Knowing or assuming and still learning about healthcare in America and thinking that it was going to be expensive, I thought I'm probably going to have to try and do something with my knee before we move as well, if we decided to. So that was another little factor. So the excitement of living in Chicago was definitely lingering for me. And I think the more that time went on, because this took a good few months, and I probably didn't mention, when I say America, it was Chicago. As those of you who know me know, I lived in Chicago. The more time went on, I think Kelly was really unhappy in her career. She was great at her job. She could have easily done it. She was easily doing it. She was fully qualified in HR, kicking ass. But it was also becoming clear to us that with this opportunity, she could change careers. And if we moved to the States and we could make the finances work with just me working, it would allow her to volunteer and explore different career paths and really find her passion and hopefully end up doing something she loves rather than just working to pay the bills and live. We're very fortunate that this happened, and Kelly is loving her new career, and we'll talk about that in future podcasts. But yeah, Kelly was really on the fence with the whole thing. To be honest, so was I initially, although I think I was warming to the adventure a little bit quicker than I think Kelly was. A lot more to lose for Kelly, right? In terms of sacrificing a job. So I asked the company then for a look and see trip. I get to meet everyone at the office, and then we'd explore Chicago for the weekend. And now I'm pretty sure at this point that the company thought, okay, well, if we pay for this trip, he's basically signing up to the move. This is the final thing. In my mind, I know they're thinking that as well. And I was dreading the thought of saying no if I hated it or if Kelly hated it or we both did. But then this was an interesting one. At that time, I ended up sitting down with our CEO of the whole company. John was his name. I had a great relationship with him. He'd always taken the time to talk with me, even when I was a junior account executive at the company, starting out in the business. And then he moved into the CEO role a few years later, and he'd always taken an interest and was just a really good leader. It was good to watch from afar how he led the business. And we're at a client charity event with Iceland, frozen food retailer in the UK, for those in the US who are listening. And I sat down with John, as I'd arranged for him to sit with the managing director of Iceland for the evening at this charity do. And that was quite the thing. And I'll never forget, we sat down, I'll never forget him telling me, he was like, look, Ben, you have to do what's right for you and your family. If you decide not to move, there will be no judgment. And to be honest with you, in my mind, I'd been thinking there'll be a lot of judgment if I turn this down. I'm in the deep end now. They really want me to move. I'm going on a look and see trip. If I pull out now, it's not a career ender, but it doesn't look good for me within the company. And that was all just in my head, right? No, that's kind of where my head was at, but still. But those reassuring words and that conversation in particular really meant a lot. And it gave me the confidence to throw ourselves into the look and see trip and just see what happens without really worrying too much about hypothetical consequences of if we go or we don't go. And I'll say as well, I think it was probably a great learning moment for me, looking back, watching John, just having that simple conversation, taking that time out to reassure me. And I mean, I'm fairly junior at this point. I mean, I was an account manager, well thought of account manager, getting great results, but I definitely took that with me as I became a leader myself. So, oh my life, the trip. Probably three, maybe four things stand out for me on this trip. One, we land and it is -8 Celsius, I think. A temperature I don't think I'd actually ever experienced before in England. And it was a bitterly dry and windy, cold temperature that I've never experienced before until it started snowing, which was obviously very wet, which we'll come on to or whatever, but it was bone chilling. I'd never felt it before. That was alarming. So we land. This is the 30th of October, by the way, or the 29th of October, 2019. And it was, snowing and freezing cold in Chicago. Weird. So we land, get to the hotel. We're up in a small city called Evanston, probably 30, 40-minute drive from the city of Chicago. But it's all new and it's exciting, and I'm a little bit apprehensive as I'm scheduled to meet every member of the executive team for meetings the following day. But in Evanston, basically all the way along Chicago, there's a lakefront, and the lakefront was a 10 to 15 minute walk away from the hotel. I'd been spending an awful lot of time on Google Maps, familiarizing myself with neighborhoods where we could maybe live. And Lake Michigan is the size of Wales. It is huge. It looks like an ocean. So when we land, I'm like, well, we have to go and see the ocean. You know, when you're on holiday, you feel like, oh my God, I have to see the sea. It's not vacation. It doesn't start until you see the ocean, sometimes until you've jumped in it. Wasn't going to jump in it, just to clarify. The strangest thing, so we go and walk to the lakefront. There's a beach on a lake. You can't smell salt water because it's fresh water. But all your senses are telling you that it should feel like the ocean. The only sense that I had on that day was it was freezing cold. So the cold hit us when we got out of the taxi, of course. It was brutal. But this walk to the lake, I don't think I'll ever forget the cold. It was breathtaking in a bad way. And yeah. -8 snowing. Said that, didn't I? Yeah. So we raced back after we've seen the lake to the hotel, and next door was this pizza place. And of course, you hear all the stories of Chicago pizza. So we wanted to try Chicago-style deep dish pizza. So we bundle into there and we sit down. And this is the memory that I have of the trip. I look at Kelly, we sit there, and we're like just in utter shock from the cold. And she's crying. And she says, I don't think I can live here. I've never been so cold in my life. And you know what? She was right. It was freezing. But the fact she was crying, she had tears in her eyes, and she's like, I don't think I can live here. I was like, oh my God. The company's just, all those stresses before I had that conversation with John just come straight back. Paid for us to fly out. We're here and she hates it, and I've not done anything yet. So I'm really thinking to myself, I've got to turn on my selling skills here. I was getting more and more excited. The adventure side of me was really starting to kick in. Thinking back to John's conversation, forget the politics. This is about me and Kelly, who is crying in Giordano's in Evanston. Nightmare. Anyway, so then our first deep dish experience gets ruined. I'll tell you why. Before we go out on the trip, before we move, Kelly watches this show on Netflix. I think it was called Game Changers. And as a result, she decides that she wants to be a vegetarian. What a time to choose this. But anyway, I tried to be as supportive as I can. I think I lasted 48 hours. I like my meat. That's another conversation. I'm a big guy. I couldn't comprehend it, but I supported her as much as I could. Turns out she then became a vegetarian for like over 2 years. It made my already crap cooking skills even more of a problem in the kitchen. So because of that, we ordered this bloody deep dish pizza with broccoli in it. And I love broccoli more than the next guy. It is my favourite vegetable. But in a pizza, this pie pizza, deep dish with like puree in it, like pie, it wasn't the best. It was a big old pie. It took at least 45 minutes to cook because that's how long deep dishes take. And I think we probably ate one slice each. It was massive. So I didn't get the pizza I was looking for. We'll talk about pizzas in Chicago another day. I've had the best pizza of my life. Chicago made me fall in love with pizza again. The UK is very unimaginative. Domino's pizza. They were great at the time. I've reached another level of pizza love from Chicago. Anyway, okay, so day 2. 2 things probably stuck with me. I talked about how dry and cold it was, but with the snow, I actually got drenched on the walk into the office. I was wet through from the snow / icy rain. So as I walk in and I'm in my suit, I'm meeting all of the exec and I'm shaking hands. Naturally, I want to make a good impression. And I look like a drowned rat. There was no salvaging it. I went into the bathroom and got tissues, and I was trying to dry my hair, trying to dry my face. But flip me, also going from that extreme cold to the inside with the heating on, I run hot. I was a sweaty, dripping mess. I'd got wax coming down from my hair. It was horrendous. It was very embarrassing. And those poor exec members, and I don't think any of them are still with the business now, so none of them are here to testify to what I'm saying. But flip me, I looked awful. So anyway, that's one memory. And then the other memory I have is the fact that it was Halloween. And the guy from HR who messaged me about the trip and everything, he was like, "Don't forget your costume. Americans take Halloween very seriously." So I think he's trying to embarrass the shit out of me. I was like a joke? Is this like some Irish joke? Like, just have on the new guy or potential new guy? I also didn't/don't like dressing up at all. I don't mind it so much now, and a few Halloween parties, funnily enough, in Chicago kind of got me into it. But I had an allergic reaction to face paint when I was a child, and that's part of it, I think. And then there's the embarrassment factor and all that stuff. But yeah, I'm all right with it now. So I was like, right, I'm here to make a good impression. They're definitely having me on. Like, no one in the UK would dream of dressing up in the office for Halloween, like, at all. I'm here to make a good impression. Obviously going to wear a suit. I walk into the lunch event. Everyone is dressed up. And so our VP of supply chain at the time, the Michelin Man, with a big, giant, inflatable Michelin Man outfit, marketing director or marketing someone at the time, dressed as a Mona Lisa painting with a giant frame on his head, and his head is the Mona Lisa. Who else was there? There was the president of the company. He then comes out, who I'd had a meeting with earlier, and he was in normal attire. He then comes out, he's got spray paint all over him, he's green as the Incredible Hulk. I'm like, what the hell is going on? This is like the flipping Twilight Zone. Like, I'm in this lunch break, and everyone is dressed like crazy. Anyway, so, I mean, that was that. The rest of it was all fine. Got to meet everyone. Blah, 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 blah. All good. The work side of it, I'm like, yeah, I can do this. This. I can bring a lot to the table. I'm excited. This is a new experience. Let's go. Anyway, so after that, I'm in selling job on Kelly mode. We head down to Wrigley Field. For UK listeners, that's the Chicago Cubs, second oldest baseball stadium in the US. Really cool area just north of the city in Chicago, but further south than Evanston, where we were. So we head down to Wrigley Field. Although, again, bitterly cold, there's definitely something magical about that area, especially for like a British person who's never been to America before. It's my first time traveling there. Big American sports bars like you see in the movies. The giant old baseball stadium, traditional. It was as American as America had been in my mind from like movies that I'd watched growing up, and I loved it. So I ended up in a place called Smoke Daddy, me and Kelly, a barbecue sports bar, which came on to be probably my most frequented favourite place in Wrigley. We ended up living by Wrigley. Spoiler. And I still go back there, like when I travel to Chicago. I'm going to Chicago next week. Whether or not I end up in Smoke Daddy, TBC, I will try. There's a couple of other places I love as well. I just remember us both sitting there in Smoke Daddy, looking out at the stadium from the bar, eating barbecue food, and having a beer, and thinking, oh my God, I think we're going to live here. And I'll never forget that moment. We looked at each other. It was crazy. Then, over the weekend, what did we do? What did I put down here? Oh, God, the architecture tour. Sounds boring as hell. It sounds very un-me. It was freezing, for one. But also, everyone told me it was the best thing to do in Chicago. And although it sounds so boring, it is the coolest boat ride ever. It's on a boat, up and down the Chicago River, right through the heart of downtown. All different awesome shaped skyscrapers, and there's a guy on the microphone or girl giving the tour, basically describing how all these buildings were designed and the history of Chicago and the stories behind them. Blew us away. The selling job at this point was going really well. Then we head up to the Hancock Tower. And this is where I was told to seal the deal with the views, having cocktails. It's a really tall skyscraper, maybe the second or third tallest tower in Chicago. But I will never forget the freak out that I was having. But knowing at the same time, we've got to go and do this tower to impress Kelly. What am I on about? I am really scared of heights. I've got better with it over time. but I'm convinced I suffer with vertigo. Like when I'm really high up, I feel like I'm going to fall, and my head moves and feels all wonky. And anyway, not great. This place was the 95th or 96th floor signature rooms cocktail bar. Shut down now apparently, which is sad. Hopefully they reopen it because it's the most spectacular view. I got on the elevator ride and I'm nervous as hell. Like, I'm on edge. I've already built it up in my head. This is suicide. I'm going in this really tall elevator to the tallest building I think I've probably ever been to. Maybe on par or slightly less tall than the Shard in London, which I did once and did not do well. That's a story for another time. I had horrendous jet lag. I'd never experienced jet lag before either. My face was, my face was hurting from the cold. I was experiencing this feeling that I didn't realise at the time, but it was jet lag. And then I get out into this corridor at the top when I get out the elevator, and it genuinely feels like my brain is coming in and out of my head. I can feel the building swaying. It was insane. It was not fun for me. But what I will say is, incredible view. We saw the sun go down. Or did we see the sun go down with the snow and stuff? Maybe I'm embellishing this story. I'm a salesman after all. I've been up there when the sun's going down. Maybe it was already dark. It probably would have been dark. I've got the photo somewhere. I should probably check. Where I'm like hiding from trying to stand away from the window as the photo's being taken. But breathtaking view. I'd never seen anything like it. I'd never been to New York. I'd never been to see big high rises and see like a real big city. It really, in that moment, it was like opening my eyes to a whole world that I knew I wouldn't get to experience if we didn't move. Third or fourth memory, I don't know what we're on now. Katie, a lady who's a good friend now, was tasked with showing us around a few neighbourhoods as to where we could live as well. The Lakeview area, just north of the city. It was so cold that day, and I vividly remember Katie just turning around in the car. Kelly was in the back seat, and she goes, "Are you okay, Kelly?" She just replies, she goes, "No, I've never been so cold in my life." And I think you had to be there, but the way in which she said it, and just considering how cold we were, it really made me laugh. I'll never forget that. So, as I say, I think I was on a true selling mission, and I think deep down I was sold at this point, at least on the adventure for the next 2 years. Little did I know about the pandemic and everything else that was to come, which we'll talk about on the podcast. And I think that the trip really did give Kelly the confidence that we could take this big risk together as well. So when we got back, and we had to make a decision pretty quickly after that, we started playing a game, and we still play it now, and it's evolved over time. But initially, before we moved, it was on the count of 3, do you want to move to America, yes or no? 1, 2, 3. Then the game evolved more recently to, do you want to stay in America, yes or no? 1, 2, 3, and so on. Then it's now evolved into, are we going to live in America forever, yes or no? And we 1, 2, 3, and we play the game, and it's pretty much always been yes since we started playing. I think it just gives us comfort in some way, some weird way. So there you go. We don't play it so much now. We're pretty settled, obviously, but there's been times over the last 5 years, which I'll come to talk about, which were difficult. So yeah, we played that game. It's funny, whatever. It's probably not funny for anyone listening, so I'm just waffling. All right, that feels like a pretty decent place to stop. Obviously, hence me being here. Shortly after that, we said yes, and then a lot of other things unfolded, which I'll come on to talk about. I think we'll, in the next, maybe a part 2 of 5 years in America, maybe that's what I'll call the podcast, I'm not sure. We'll talk about the move itself, packing up the house, saying goodbye, an incredible surprise party that I'll never forget. The pandemic and being alone for 6 months and the stress of eventually getting Kelly into the country. All of that to come in part 2. But I wanted to end with something a little bit different, a little bit fun. We obviously did the first episode, Americanisms versus Britishisms. I've got a new one, and it's been on my mind for a while, and it resurfaced while we were in Las Vegas at an ice hockey game. We saw the Golden Knights. They lost in overtime. It was a really cool experience. Sporting chants in America and sporting chants in the UK. Oh my life, they couldn't be more difficult. I'm going to say, like, American sports chants, sorry guys, it's like being in kindergarten or in reception. Like, they are so tame. What am I talking about? Where's my notes? All right. I'm going to read you a few. I had to write them down. For example, while living in Chicago, we saw the Cubs. Let's go, Cubbies, let's go. Okay, sorry, I should probably put more effort into them, but let's go, Cubbies, let's go was one chant. I'll talk about this at some point in the future. Started watching wrestling a bit. I used to watch it a lot as a kid. Then I went off it massively. Been watching it for the last year and a half. That's a whole chant. That's a whole chant. That's a whole discussion I'll come on to another time. Some of the chants on that, and I know it's not sport, but it's got an audience that is present and it's live and they do chants. This is awesome. Or, you deserve this. Or, you suck. I mean, they're just so simple. What was the one at the ice hockey? Go Knights go. MVP. The clap. And they start clapping faster. We're number one. We're number one. Defense. Defense. I think you started to get the picture. Well, at least I hope you are. Guys, you got to up your game. America, come on now. I need to implement some much better chants into this wonderful country. So in the UK, it is safe to say that chants are definitely a little bit less censored, much more creative and downright offensive. I've got a list of a few ones that I've witnessed in the past. Some of them are tame, but there's a stark contrast to what I just demonstrated. Referee's a wanker. Solid. Pretty standard. You hear that at every soccer game, football game. Aston Villa, my sports team, we had a striker called Gabby Ebonglahor, and he was very fast. Gabby Ebonglahor, he's fast as F-U-C-K. Yep. All right. John Carew, big, tall Norwegian striker. John Carew, he's bigger than me and you. It goes on. There's probably some expletives in there. Carew is on fire. Will Griggs on fire. You probably maybe heard that here in the States. Will Griggs on fire. Your defense is terrified. It's Will. That was like, no. That went wild during one of the World Cups or Euros. You've got the Seven Nation Army one. Boxing would have been Anthony Joshua. Oh, Anthony Joshua. Names of players. Rooney. He's here. He's there. He's everywhere. Yeah, that's always one. Then you've got some really cool creative ones like Mo Salah, running down the wing. Mo Salah. That's a good one. And then you've got the cool, what have we got? Ya, Torre, Colo, Coca-Cola. You get the drift. Never forget doing that at New Year's Eve one night, by the way, on the tables when I was maybe 21, 22 with friends back in Cannock. What a great night, guys, if you remember. Yaya and Colo Torre were football brothers, playing for two separate teams at the time. What a chant that was. Then you've got songs associated with clubs like Blue Moon, Saw You Standing Alone. You've got You'll Never Walk Alone. God. Shit support, my lord, shit support. That's a good one. You only sing when you're winning. Pretty tame, but you don't know what you're doing. And they get that to the ref quite a lot. Very tame as well. He's getting sacked in the morning. That's always a good one for the manager. And when a team's not performing well. And then a personal favourite, support Liverpool, just to clarify, but they had a really good chant about some of their players. We've got Salah, oh Mane, Bobby Firmino, but we sold Coutinho. All of those are football players, by the way. So it gets much more creative, and thousands of people all sing them together. There's way more than that, and I should probably revisit them at some time. But there you go. That is a big difference that I have noticed culturally by living in the States. Football, sporting chants, chants in general are just weird in the States. Sorry, guys. UK wins, hands down. It's much more fierce. There's much more banter involved. It's much more personable. Defense! Defense! You suck! This is awesome. I'm sorry, I'm struggling with it. So anyway, that was on my mind. I wanted to share that and have a little bit of fun at the end. Also, in cinemas, well, speaking of audiences, I don't know if I touched on this on a previous podcast, but I've been in the cinema in the US and people clap at the end of the movie. Who the hell are you clapping to? Okay, the screen, cool. And people like laugh out loud, rolling. I've only ever laughed out loud, rolled. I've only ever laughed out loud in the cinema probably once, and I was watching The Hangover because that was laugh out loud funny. But oh my god, you'd be watching a Disney film. Oh my god! And then clapping at the end and getting emotional. It's very strange, but anyway, just a cultural difference I've noticed. It's absolutely fine. I'm not knocking it, but just an observation. All right, this has been really fun. I'm hopefully gonna do a part 2 in Chicago. That is my plan, and we'll talk about the things I've just mentioned. But look, appreciate you listening. I will catch you guys real soon. Thanks ever so much. Like, subscribe, do all of that stuff, please. Share it with your friends. And yeah, if you want to be a guest on the show, if it's someone that we used to be friends or we used to hang out a lot more, find it hard to stay connected with everyone. Want to just have a chat, reach out.